Hey, what is up, guys? This is the third episode of the Gentleman's Agreement podcast. I am Amari, and this is my co-host Brandon. And today we're gonna talk about the matches that happened over the weekend and kind of the results. Kind of go over our predictions, what
Mm-hmm.
happened, and kind of give you a little breakdown on everything. But to start, I just want to say from me and Brandon, thank you for over 200 views on our last two podcasts combined.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty cool. Thank you for everyone who reacted from the tweets and any any reaching out that anyone did for us. I appreciate it a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we had 19 subs. Honestly, our goal was to have at least 40 views on all the
Yeah.
videos that we made, and we literally blew that out of the water instantly. And even though it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
seem like a lot, it's a lot for us because this is literally our first time doing a podcast, my first time editing, first time using Photoshop, all of that stuff, all firsts, and we really do appreciate that a lot.
Yeah. So Amari and I talked about it a few times before we started the podcast. And I thought like not even a conservative goal, but like maybe a little bit over like a median goal was if we could get like 40 viewers for like our first, I don't know, 10 episodes or so and just have it be consistent, even with that, I would be super happy. Um, like always though, it's not about the views. It's just us about doing something that we're like learning how to do like a new skill, something that's exciting for us to do and something we were going to do anyways, just talking about Call of Duty. So 143 views on the first episode. It's fantastic. It was really cool to come out the gate like that. And 65 views as of right now on the second one and both of them have like in between 10 to 20 likes and we got 19 subscribers. It's just been great. Obviously the first episode has a lot more than the second episode, but we did a lot of like outreach for the first one. And so right now the second episode has 65 views. If we could consistently hit that for future episodes just for the time being, that would be amazing. So appreciate that. I'm gonna say all the cliche stuff real quick. Hit the like button. Feels weird saying that because I hate when YouTubers say that. But hit the like button, hit the bell, hit the subscribe button. Maybe even follow us on Twitter. My name should be like up here, I think.
Yep.
But yeah. And just crazy, just one more thing that we both have like less than 300 followers on Twitter, and our current like outreach like potential to people right now isn't very big. So this current support we're getting is amazing, and we just wanted to say thanks.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And with that, let's get into the meat and potatoes.
Oh, real quick, just make sure we cover it. Just talking about what we want to do going forward when we have weekends like this one
Oh
upcoming,
yeah, yeah.
where there's
Yep.
no matches. So our current plan right now is to do interviews with people in the amateur community. So whether that's a player or like a tournament organizer or a organization owner, stuff like that, we think that's like a gap right now in the field that isn't being filled, and we want to try and be the first ones to do that, and also to give those people a voice because people like us two, you don't really hear from like fans in the amateur community, and you don't really hear from like the players or people involved in the scene themselves. So we wanted to be able to like give them a voice, do like like a 20-minute interview or so with people that we can get our hands on, and yeah, just trying to have more just a voice in the community for all those people.
Yes, sir. And yeah, yeah, that's definitely gonna be awesome.
Hmm.
But let's get into the weekend or what happened on the weekend. So, um, or actually, before we get into that, let's talk about the upcoming actual home series, the
Hmm.
first home series, the first actual event, which is the Atlanta home series
Yep.
on February 11th through February 14th. Um, Matches are looking pretty good.
Yeah.
Um, any matchups that you're like specifically excited for that look a little
Yeah. So I'll say real quick
tantalizing?
how all these matches were determined, which I mean we kind of covered in the last episode, but they did a group selection thing after the Minnesota Toronto match yesterday, or which would be Sunday for us as we're recording this.
Hmm.
And I thought the groups were pretty even actually, and I was surprised there wasn't like one that outweighed the other. But right when I saw the schedule, my eyes instantly went to FaZe Optic
Mhm.
Sunday
Yep.
6 p.m.
I
That was the
mean,
first one that popped out at me just because it's Optic and FaZe. It's like actually Optic and actually FaZe, which you haven't been able to say for a while. So I think that matchup is going to be really dope. And then for my boys, Paris, our first match is a big test versus Optic Friday at 3 p.m. So very excited to see that one as well.
yeah, I mean, I feel like it's kind of cliche at this point to say that like matches with FaZe and matches with Optic are obviously going to pull numbers and obviously are the most exciting because it's
Hmm.
really the test of the like top of the top. You know, I mean, all of these teams are pro, but like, you know, some teams are just built different. Like
Yep.
Optic and FaZe are just that they're different. And honestly, we'll talk about it in a little bit, but there's a surprising turn of events on
Hmm.
was it Friday or I mean Saturday or Sunday?
Saturday. Yep.
Saturday, yeah.
Mm.
So we'll definitely talk about that. But I mean, uh, Thieves versus Rocker, Empire Surge. Honestly, I mean, uh, yes, the Surge aren't. They're not like this. Super like super out there team that you would think
Yeah.
would be really good. But I feel like that matchup is going to be um fairly exciting. I mean, it'll probably pull some numbers just because of what happened on Saturday. But
Mm.
other than that, I mean, kind of like matchups. Nothing really too crazy. Obviously, Optic versus Legion, like you were saying, is going to be a little
Yep.
exciting. And being a fan of Fire and how he actually like performed
Yeah.
and you know, made himself a little scary. We'll see. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, he
But
popped off.
the first matchup on Saturday was the Dallas Empire versus the New York Subliners,
Yeah.
and we we know how that went, and it was not pretty for the New York Subliners. I'll tell you that.
Mm-mm.
It was a absolute blowout. They just gave it to them full force.
Yeah, how did it feel to? Well, I think you said that you're still like slightly a New York fan
Yeah,
because you're around the air. So how did that feel seeing that?
yeah. Honestly, I expected a little more. I mean, I know that Diamond Con was only practicing with them for like 2 weeks,
Hmm.
but the numbers he was putting up was just not. Well, like I know the whole team didn't do good, but like I don't know. You gotta do a little bit more than that. And I mean, I get that these are the defending champs, but
Hmm.
that was just
Hmm.
kind of a pitiful performance. And I mean, a standout number that I could just tell you right now, Clayster with a .56 in hardpoint. That is
Yeah.
unacceptable. That is
Yep. You got tucked.
that is insane. .56 is like 18 and 32. Like you gotta try to get that type of number.
Hmm.
That is very very low. But I mean, other than that, just performances all around from the Empire. Not really any contest from the subliners.
Yeah, just going off the predictions on our previous show, we both predicted Dallas to win. If I
Mm.
remember correctly, you had Dallas 3-1, and then I had Dallas 3-0. And even with me, so obviously this match ended up being a 3-0. But even with me having this 3-0, I was like shocked, honestly. I think that's the right word to use. Just seeing how they came out, I think it was Garrison Hardpoint is the first map they played,
Yep.
and just seeing how Dallas or I almost said Dallas and Jesus, seeing how Dallas came out on that map, I was like, wow, like they're still the champs and they are the team to beat. And Shotzi and that had a 2.06 KD, 35 kills, 17 deaths on that hard point. I was like, yep, he's still MVP. He's still best player in the league. It's clear. Like
True.
not much drop off from his first COD that he's ever competed in professionally to the second one. And Illy also running the XM4 was like an eye opener. Like we all know Illy's like talent and what he brings to the table, but in the last COD, Modern Warfare, he wasn't really like I'm gonna drop a 1.1, 1.2 on your head consistently. But like in this, like you can see the makings of that starting to happen. So if Illy and Shotzi can do that, and you know like Huke's gonna bring those numbers, and Crim's gonna be your consistent leader guy, like this is easily the best team in the league, or best team in the league to me. And we'll talk about a team later on that had a match yesterday, but I don't know. Dallas is like easily number one.
I agree. I honestly they even though they were versing like a tier 2 team right now, you could say. Maybe even tier 3 with the like
Yeah.
fact that Diamond Con is so fresh. The
Hmm.
the the like discipline and the just raw talent that was just shown. And it at on the number on the screen here, you're seeing that Shotzi put up the best KD while simultaneously also having the most hill time
Yep.
on in the entire match. So that
Hmm.
just shows you how dominant these guys are. Because let me put that in perspective for you. So in the game, the person who's on the hill the most is usually engaging the most. So they're gonna get in the most fights. They're gonna be having to watch the most angles. You know what I mean? They're the run and gun. They're moving around the entire time, trying
Hmm.
to just get positioning on the other team while staying inside of this little tiny hill where he has to
Yeah.
sit there, and the enemy knows exactly where he's at, and he just has to fight his way through it and stay on that hill. And he managed to
Hmm.
actually get the best stats out of that match, and like that is just something that you don't usually see often. Usually the hill player is what we call like the dirty role.
Hmm.
You have to just be in the trenches, just fighting your way out the entire time, and that's pretty crazy to me.
Yeah, and in this game too, I'll just say real quick on that point. So the person who's playing Hill is almost always weak because more often than not there's going to be a trophy in the hill, and the trophies do damage to you in this game if it's the enemy's trophy. And if you don't have a correctly placed trophy, you're going to get naded and stunned to the death in this game. It's
Yep.
just how the current meta is. So you just gotta assume Shotzi was like almost never full health when he was in the hill, unless like they had just gotten a clean wipe. So that even like puts in perspective how impressive going 35 and 17 with 113 seconds of hill time was. But yeah, he's nasty. He's MVP.
True. And that will move on to the next matchup, which is the LA Gorillas versus the Seattle Surge. Not something
Hmm.
that um, we were specifically excited about, and not something that I was really too uh, too crazy about or too excited about. But
The matchup, right?
yeah.
Yeah. But so yeah, this one I know I said on the first episode that. And well, actually, let me just say all of this to help put it in more perspective. These matches right here were essentially glorified scrims for these teams. So, like whether or not the players wanted to take them seriously, because at the end of the day, these matches don't mean anything for the season. It's
Mm-hmm.
just like a show match, like a dry run for the league to get all the viewers back, make sure the production stuff is good,
Mm-hmm.
get the players going back into like the
Exhibition.
competitive. Yeah, just to get everything like back to where it was before, get the wheels greased, make sure everything is running fine.
Mm-hmm.
So even with that being said, at the end of the day, these players are competitors. So I know they don't want to go out there in front of like 70, 80,000 viewers and get stomped on. And that's not what happened in this series. But like Seattle, to me, I said originally is either going to be like the best team in the league or one of them, or the worst team in the league. And in this series versus a team I thought they would 3-1, and I obviously predicted Seattle to win, they just not did not look that good. And like if you look at their statistics, like Gunless had a 1.13, Octane had a 1.01, KD, Pristini had a 0.93, and Looney had a 0.84. Like that's not horrible. And you probably would have expected them to win maybe half or a little bit more than half the series with that type of stat line from their guys. But I thought it looked worse than that for them. Like I thought they looked like the worst team in the league to me. I'll just say that. But you go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, just looking at the player list in general, I mean you expect Octane to do, even though 1.01 is not bad. Octane is not a 1.01 player. He is
And neither is
a
his role.
Yeah, exactly. He's supposed to be out there, just putting up as much numbers as he can, just like I mean, and I feel like it's kind of unique to him where the main AR is your like Slayer type, which is kind of weird, but
Mhm.
like that's what he's, sunken into, and that's the role that he likes to play. So it's not something out of the ordinary to see him putting up numbers like 1.4, 1.35, numbers like that.
Mhm.
And just putting up a 1.01 as the star player, you got like that's not really something that you can do and also win matches at the same time. But I mean,
Mhm.
at the same time, you have Apathy, Assault, Silly, and Vivid, which is
Yeah.
not an all-star team whatsoever.
at this
This
point,
this is
at
just
least.
like yeah. I mean, obviously Apathy back in the day, the old man, he was ahead of his
Two
time, but
chips.
like realistically, that team does not look like a team that is going to compete with the top dogs in your phases or your Empire or your Optic. Like, but
Mm.
I mean, this was just kind of like match. I wasn't. I mean, yes, I was surprised that Seattle lost, but at the same time, I wasn't too surprised, and I wasn't like putting all my eggs in the same basket with this one. It was kind of like a, you know, they might win, they might lose, and in the end,
Mm.
it was like it was a close one,
Yeah.
but it gave it to the Gorillas, and that's something that I mean shows a little bit for the Seattle Surge at least because we were both almost like we were both unanimously for the Gorillas being the absolute worst team in their
Yep.
own tier, which is yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I know in the tier maker thing we did, I had personally LAG in the D tier, which was they would have been in their own tier, like you said, in the worst. And I think you were like vying for them more like a C minus. So
Hmm.
we ended up putting them in C. But like just in my eyes, I thought this team like was not really going to be a problem for Seattle. And I think you and I both predicted them to win 3-1, which obviously we both got that one wrong.
Yeah.
But I think the biggest thing when I was watching this series, I was like laughing. The biggest thing that I pointed out for Seattle and LA when we were breaking it down before the match happened is that I didn't think Looney and Pristini would be like would they I didn't think they would have an issue with Vivin and Apathy, like the sub matchup,
Hmm.
like the sub and flex matchup. And like Apathy dropped a 1.22 on them and probably had one of the higher kill series out of anyone this week or weekend with 94. So yeah, I was obviously wrong on that. And if you look at their hard point KD statistics, Looney had a .71. He had 30 kills, 42 deaths. That's not going to cut it. So again, this is like a glorified scrim. It's an exhibition match. So it's kind of weird putting a ton of stock into this, but like man, like I did not think it was gonna go this way. But
Yeah, I mean, you can't put a lot of stock, but at the same time, we have nothing to put stock into other than this. You know
yeah,
what I mean? So like, this is our
fair.
only examples of their play. But yeah, that was definitely not something that we expected at all. But
Mm,
yeah, with that, that was kind of a not too exciting matchup. Nothing super crazy, but just like a little kind of dirt on the Seattle Surge's record. But the next matchup, I'd say one of the more exciting matchups and more exciting outcomes was the Atlanta FaZe versus the Florida Mutineers.
mm,
They brought it to Game 5 and ended up the Florida Mutineers brought it to Game 5 and ended up beating the Atlanta FaZe 3-6 in the
yep.
final search and destroy, which was actually super crazy, honestly. The whole series was a bit weird and like the first hard point was close. Search and Destroy went game 11 or yeah, round 11. Control
Mm,
went to round 5. But then the the second hard point 250 to 117.
yeah.
That
Florida opened up the floodgates.
is yeah, that is not a that is not Atlanta FaZe versus Florida like
Yeah.
score line. Or if it
You've
was, you'd
never
expect
seen
it the
that.
other way. Like
Yeah, you've never seen that from FaZe ever.
yeah.
Maybe one game ever in the league they played that bad. But
And I mean, you can just look at the
yeah,
numbers. Like, oh my word, they got tucked in to bed. They
yeah,
were
like
Abizi 17 and 27,
yeah.
Celium 16 and 24. I've never, I has Celium even dropped under like a point .9? Like that. This is kind of crazy. And then obviously the last search and destroy 3-6. Um, yeah, this is a eye opener. Kind of a questionable like we talked about this last year with FaZe being that FaZe is obviously a like they're an MVP looking team, but
Hmm.
they I feel like they don't have the ice. They're not like under pressure. Like a lot of the times, they're a little shaky. And they, I mean, like obviously in champs, you expected a team like Atlanta FaZe to be the top dogs. And I feel like we were talking about this, the struggle of their like leadership role or like what is happening in the team to have these shaky performances like last year, like losing to the Huntsman and losing to the Florida Mutineers. Um, they I don't know. They're I thought they looked great. They looked great in scrims prior, but I mean,
Mm-hmm.
losing to the Florida Mutineers is not something we expected, and
Mm.
we'll just have to look out for what happens on the
Yeah.
11th. But
Yeah. So just thinking back to the like tier list rankings thing that we did again, we obviously, had Atlanta S tier, slightly behind Dallas at the time. And then we had Florida B tier. But the thing I was saying, and maybe they're already there, but the thing I was saying about Florida is that I thought they were a solid B team, even with swapping out Havoc for Neptune, because I think they just have such a like high floor consistent factor when you
Mhm.
have guys like Awakening and Skies who, like you can see in the map to clinch the series, Awakening went 10-5, Skies went 9-6. Pretty damn good. And when you have two guys like that you know you can rely on, and they also play in roles that makes it like easier for them to do that, with Skies doing a main AR, Awakening playing more of a flex role, it like keeps it good for them. And then I was saying on that episode that if Neptune, with Map 5, like he didn't have to do that well, but in the series overall he did really well. But if Neptune can like come out and go into that role of being like a SMG slayer and having Slacked being more of the like veteran player, maybe dropping like a point .9 more often than not, and allowing Skies, Neptune, and Awakening to do their thing, then this could be like a mid A team. And this is what you saw from them. Obviously, that still would put them a tier below FaZe, but like a team is also going to beat an S team. It's not just like a S team's going to beat them no matter what.
Mhm.
So I I would say when I saw the series result and watching it, I was like, wow, like FaZe is really going to lose. Like just thinking about my previous thoughts, maybe I should not have been so surprised, and also maybe I should have factored in Florida being more of a live underdog than I thought they were.
Yeah, and I mean, you know that any team realistically could be the team to put up the numbers. You know what I mean? Like this is the pro league. All of these players are
Mm,
pro. All of these teams are pro. So realistically, any team winning at any moment. We were talking about this, I think, in the first episode as well. That like these are all pro players. So expecting a team to just win bar none every time isn't realistic. These are all good players. These are all pick the litter players that are gonna be performing
mm,
and are gonna like obviously you can predict some better than others, but I mean realistically Awakening, Skies, Neptune, Slack, like those aren't players that are gonna sit down and roll over for anyone. You know what I
sure.
mean? They they want to prove themselves. All of these teams want to prove themselves, and a team like that facing this top dog, top contender team is really gonna try to stake their claim to like being worthwhile to stay in the league and stay on a team. And I think this
Mm,
just proves that right there, and the fact that they were just fighting to the very end. And I mean, these matches that are 5 games long, they are not easy to play through, especially when
sure.
you're going back and forth. And I mean, you can say after FaZe getting put down 250 to 117 in that hard point, that is really going to
Mm,
put a toll on your team. And I mean, I know you as a coach, you probably have had that like, they're up 2-1, they just need to win this last game and then they just get railed and then it's
yep.
just like what do you even tell them? You're like you just got to bounce
Yeah.
back. Like you've got to regain. There's no like yeah, it happened, but it is what it is. You just got to bounce back and that's something that it looked like FaZe just um couldn't do in that matchup. But
Hmm.
that being said, um, matchup was an upset, big upset. But we'll move on to the next match, which was a
Yeah,
little,
I'll take this one
a
for you.
little less of
I
an
got
upset.
this one. So, as I staked my claim, I think it was either on the first or second episode. I am now a Paris Legion fan. You see the merch, you see the hat, and wait for it. You see the socks. Oh, where's the show? Oh, the logo's not on that side. But trust me, these are pair of socks. Then Scraps playing in this match only had a .86 KD, which I mean that happens. But he got his revenge versus London. It was a great series for the team overall, and I will say the combination of fire and water, aqua and fire, they went off. I was pleasantly surprised by
I
Aqua.
like that
I
combo.
think, yeah, I think he had the highest kill total in any series on the weekend. 101 kills. So just real quick for anyone who's not like super in tune with like stats for the Call of Duty stuff or just Call of Duty in general, if you can get over 100 kills in a 5 game series, that is insane. Because in map 2 and 5, it's search and destroy. if you can get even 10 kills in that, fantastic. You're doing your thing. But like he got 101 kills with also while playing 2 game modes or 2 maps that if you get over 10, that's amazing. So if you just think about that, map that out, you can tell he had a hell of a series. And then Classic, the .9 guy, that's all we need from him. Give me a .9 and we are chilling. And then Fire, his first ever game as a professional player coming from the amateur scene, just like not too long ago, had probably the best show out of any former amateur turned pro for the league this season, or from this weekend. Then if we can win with Scraps getting a .86, Lord, we are going to beat some good teams.
That man
Paris
dropped
is
a .31 in search. Oh my
yeah.
god. That man
Yeah,
was
I mean
that man turned his monitor
that's
off.
it's funny because like he played bad for sure.
Yeah.
Individually he played bad. But if we can win series, we meaning Paris, if we can win series with arguably our best player in my mind dropping a .86, like yeah, I'm gonna have to start bumping up Paris a little bit in my head.
I mean, yeah, Fire is probably their best player in my head,
Well,
but we could fight about that.
I still believe in Scraps.
We'll
But
see.
London, kind of, a little bit of what I thought. Actually, I sent Amari a tweet after the podcast, or like a day or two after, with CDL Intel or CDL Intel. Jesus, they tweeted out where all of the players are playing from to their knowledge, and London had someone in the UK. I was like, what? And then I did like a little digging and found out that Zero is playing from the UK, and people were saying he was pinging like 130, 140 during the series. Now that probably played into how the series, like the outcome of the series. But I mean, he's in the UK. I mean, you just have to deal with it at this point. And he went negative 19.77 KD for the series, which, in all things considered, that's probably not too bad for playing on 130 ping. But I mean, London has to deal with it, and if that's their situation, then they got to improve
And
just as a
honestly,
team, I guess.
I'm gonna speak on that a little bit. The fact that they stayed with a player who was pinging from across the world in a professional
Yep.
event is kind of ridiculous in my head. Like I mean, for example, a team like the Subliners, I'd say the Subliners are a more premier team than the London Royal Ravens. Like just
For
in
sure.
terms of their parent organization and just their presence overall.
Mhm.
I feel like it's more professional to have everyone on an equal playing field and your team having an equal advantage, at least in the base. If me and Brandon 2v2 scraps and fire right now, and
We're getting smoked.
we're both in the same, yeah, I mean we are getting smoked, but like
Yeah.
if we're in the same if we're in the same state or in the same country, we have a better chance than if Brandon is pinging from like West Africa. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the the equal playing field is at least like a base, you're pinging around the same numbers, but they literally played a game with a player who is not in the same country or the same
Yeah.
continent. Like that is not acceptable in my head, and I think that I don't even know why the league allowed it in the first place for a
Mm.
player to be that far away and still play in the game. Like it just doesn't really make sense in my head why that was even allowed. But I mean, if it's not a rule, I guess it's not a rule, but that's kind of ridiculous in my head,
Yeah, we
and
talked
Paris
about it
deserved it.
in the last episode, remember, with like the importance of the teams playing in the same facility as
Yep.
each other, or at least in the same state. And that kind of showed here. And I'm also surprised, like you, after finding out all that information, that they don't have a sub for
Yeah.
Zero, at least until he can make it here. I understand with COVID and different countries having different policies of how you can like travel from one country all the way across the world to another.
Mhm.
Completely understandable. But we can make like we can make a positive out of the situation by finding someone else to play with until Zero gets there. And now I know Zero probably wouldn't like that because if he had to sit out and risk someone else taking his spot, well, I don't think Zero would get a spot taken because you could again argue, like how I did with Scraps, that he might be like the most talented player on this team.
Mhm.
But you can, like, I don't know, as a player he probably would be a little bit worried. But from like a team standpoint, I definitely would have been like trying to find a sub or just some player that lives in America that lives close to Shawnee, Dylan, and Alex that can at least give them a better chance. Because if you have a player who's going to be pinging on a 130, 140 for the foreseeable future, it just really hinders their chance of winning just off the bat. So it's tough. It's a tough situation.
It is indeed. It is indeed. And we'll move on to the last matchup, which is the Minnesota Rocker versus the Toronto Ultra. In this matchup, I had the Toronto Ultra winning 3-2, and when I was watching this matchup, I was like, this matchup went game 5, so it means it
Yep.
was 2-2, and we were watching the last Search and Destroy, and oh my goodness, I was like on the edge of my seat. I really was hoping that the Ultra would win, and honestly, I'm really rooting for. I mean, obviously, I'm not a Toronto Ultra fan, but I'm rooting for them in spirit. I mean, Kleenex being, not new to the league, but he's relatively new compared to these players. And Methods obviously being, the funny, goofy guy that we can all see on
Mm-hmm.
Twitter and YouTube. And it's just like they're likable players. Like they're
Mm-hmm.
likable. Those two players specifically are more likable than Cammy and Bance, just because they're not that they're like unknown players, but they're just like under the radar type of players, like players you don't hear about too much, that don't talk too much, don't have a big presence
Mm-hmm.
online, don't have big YouTubes, stuff like that. But I mean, I was really rooting for them. They ended up losing in I forget what round, but they ended up losing the last Search and Destroy,
Mm-hmm.
and
I think it was round 11.
yeah,
I
I think
think.
I think it went to the very very end, but I mean, actually attached Major Maniac Priesta, the Rocker, they deserve it. They won. They ended up digging it out at the very end. In,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we have the stats here. If you're listening, but we have the stats here, and the Toronto Ultra had their highest KD in control was a .77, and their lowest
Mm-hmm.
was a .38, which that is like I could go into that game and drop more than a .38. Like, and that is being honest. I'd say I could probably play a game and drop more than a .38 realistically, and
Mm-hmm.
that is just absurd. And I mean, game 5, exciting games. The Rocker honestly didn't look too bad over the over the Ultra, but they outslayed, but somehow the Ultra were able to kind of dig it back,
Mm-hmm.
in like sneak out the hard point in the
Mm-hmm.
S&D.
Yeah. So looking at our show doc right here for our predictions, I had Minnesota 3-1. Obviously, that's not how it ended up playing out, but I got the correct winner. And then, like you said, you had Toronto 3-2. So I took the step ahead there. But with looking at these stats and just remembering the series, you can tell like green, green, green for Minnesota players, and obviously accuracy with a .9. And then it was literally the opposite for Toronto, red, 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 and then one green with Bance. And I will say real quick, I did say negative stuff towards Bance the player. I'm sure he's a great guy, but I was just surprised he was still in the league because he like just from what I remember in these past few seasons, he hasn't really been that productive. And I thought they could get like a more talented player than him at this point. But he dropped a 1.2 KD and a loss.
He might have heard you.
Now,
He might have heard you saying some shit.
yeah, he might
Or,
have. But without looking at the game and the series too in depth from like a coaching standpoint, I don't know if that 1.2 KD was like a good 1.2 KD, meaning like maybe he was baiting his teammates really hard or playing more individually than he should have,
Mhm.
considering his teammates all went negative. But I mean, got to give it to him. 1.2 KD surprised me, and it's interesting that this Minnesota team, looking at their hardpoint KDs, that they are as not bad. I don't want to make it sound horrible, but they were as like off to where I had them in my mind with Priestov a .93, Major Maniac .96, Attach a 1.11, and an accuracy of .74, which is really like the biggest detriment
Mm.
of all of those. But you would expect this team to be like pretty good at slaying with those names. But like you can see what ballooned all of their KDs is in control. Like they had a plus 11, plus 10, plus 5 than even KD for Priesta. So, yeah, I think this Minnesota team is basically right where I thought they would be. I thought they would be a solid team that would play fundamentally well, and then they had 4 guys who are established in the scene. And I expected that they would beat Toronto, and they did.
True. Yeah. I remember we were talking about this last episode. We were talking about the role issues that they were having, and I don't know if you
Hmm.
want to go into it, but I remember you pointed it out to me when we were watching that I believe Attach was running the sub
Hmm. And so was
in the game.
Priesta at times.
Yep, which was a bit surprising. I mean, it wasn't too surprising, but I mean, Attach. You think of Attach, you think of like a kind of a AR flex type of like player. You don't think of a sub, but I mean, it it is what it is. I mean, they ended up winning,
Mm.
but something that you keep an eye on moving forward, just because traditionally he's not that role. So like, I mean, he has been in the league for probably as long as it has existed in like my eyes
Yeah.
and my memory, and he's been playing like certain roles, and switching that up for different games is a bit hard. And I mean, just Call of Duty scene in general, like the game switches every single year, so it's
Yep.
not something like a Counter Strike or a League of Legends where it's the same game and you just practice and hone your skill. It's more of like an adaptive who can get better faster. And I know that people always talk about how some teams adapt faster than others. And I remember in
Mm.
years past, people used to say that Optic was able to adapt fast, but then they would fall off at the end of the year. And like that's like a legit fear and a legit like thing for some teams, is that they can just get caught up in and like teams can just get better, which is
Hmm.
just kind of crazy to think about. But moving on to the next matchup is Optic versus the LA Thieves.
Yep. Yeah. So yeah, the Optic Chicago LA Thief series. This is the series that everyone is looking forward to, and even we were. And it's funny, we were watching this in a Discord call with Amari, myself, and a couple of other of our friends, and just like making predictions on the viewership that this series would get. I way overshot it, just being confident in the league, and I should have like thought, okay, this is like an exhibition match. This doesn't mean anything. And I said it was gonna get like 200,000 viewers. I think Amari said
Yep,
107,000,
107.
which yeah, which ended up being like pretty close. I think it maxed at like 109 if I remember correctly. But yeah, like all eyes in the league were on this series, and what a horrible time to play like LA Thieves did.
Oh God
Just
Almighty.
yeah, going down the line, Kenny 0.75 KD, Slasher 0.81 KD, Temp 0.8 KD, and TJ Halley with a 0.73 KD. It was almost worse than that,
Pitiful,
honestly.
pitiful. It
It
was
it, it
disgusting.
almost like just watching the game and seeing how everything was playing out. It was almost worse than that.
Yeah.
I like if you would have told me all these players had like a point 0.5 or point 0.6, I legitimately would not have been shocked because like you got in this game we got old school formal dropping a 1.4 in hard point. Dashy went on like a 9 or 10 kill streak I think, and he ended up having 1.64 KD. And then old school scum dropping a 29 and 18 with a 1.61 KD. Like if this is how Optic is going to play versus a caliber team like this, and where you have T2P, the formal and scum duo, playing with a 1.2, 1.3 KD, which granted they're not going to do every series, but we've seen them do in the past and other titles, then this is going to be probably my second team in the S tier. Now, like I said, it's hard to throw too much stock into these, but like you said, is the only thing we have to go off of.
Mhm.
Um, Optic looks better than FaZe right now, and that's the biggest thing I took away from this. That we had the LA Thieves in the A tier, and they absolutely got hork slammed by Optic.
Yeah.
And that's kind of I don't know if I am going to bump down LA Thieves from this series because like you can call this like a one off, like a
Mhm.
fluke, whatever. And I think I'm still gonna be like confident in them as being like an A tier team, but this one was an eye opener. And also with FaZe losing the way they did to Florida, I think Optic is probably my second team right now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna say this. So I've seen their scrims, I've seen their scrim results, and they usually go back and forth. It's not really, a full wipe every time. But I mean, the fact that every single mode they looked like they were facing an amateur team.
Yep.
Like they
Not even a
were,
good one.
yeah, like they were spawn trapping them in hard point. Um, in Search and Destroy is a bit closer, but like in Control, it was like not even getting close to the point, just spawn trapping even more. Like it is just not. It was not a pretty sight, and honestly, being LA Thieves being my number one team right now, it was kind of saddening, but I mean,
Yeah, let
realistically,
us know
I
your
know.
emotions. Let's hear it.
Yeah, I mean, so I saw this and I was feeling down bad. I remember when last year Subliners was my team, and uh, you were a London fan,
Yep.
and we faced off, and then you beat us, and it just like it kind of has that same sting to it, just because it's Optic.
Numerous
You know what I
times.
mean? Like, and
Hmm.
I'm so down bad because every time I check Twitter and Reddit a lot for Call of Duty stuff, and
Hmm.
all just because there's so many Optic fanboys, literally every single tweet, every single post on Reddit was Optic beat LA Thieves. Optic is so good. Optic this. Scumpy is back. T2P, and it was just it was getting under my skin. It's so annoying to hear that, but I mean realistically, if you get chokeslammed like that, you kind of
Yep.
gotta get a little clownage going on in the Twitter on the bird and stuff like that. So,
Hmm.
I mean, in that case, I suppose it is what it is. But
Yeah, all these players know going into a match versus Optic, if you get had bad like this, you're going to get had bad on social. And just like you said, I'm sure they got it very bad.
yeah,
And I mean, quite frankly, even for like I said, a glorified scrim, they deserve it. They
true,
got body slammed on the main stage,
true.
virtually, of course.
The
But
virtual main stage, yeah.
yeah.
But I mean, with this being the last game, there's nothing really else that happened during that last. Just kind of
Hmm.
some like um some closing little meetings between the players and stuff like that, and
Hmm.
meeting to talk about the how they were gonna pick what teams face each other on the 11th. But I mean, it was an exciting 2 days. I'm looking forward to the upcoming stuff going on.
Hmm.
Um, so that should be exciting.
Yeah. I'll say real quick too. Just going into this event or this weekend,
Mhm.
having a ton of experience watching the game from Codcaster, which is obviously how the production is. Since I'm, coaching, I'm in Codcaster more hours a week than most people on Earth.
Mhm.
So, like, I already knew that this game was going to be very entertaining for the fans to watch, and that's what I told again for like the viewers, our friends that we watched it with on this past Sunday and Saturday. But like I before we went to those matches, I was telling them like you guys are really gonna enjoy watching this. Like this game's very entertaining to watch. Competitively, it's very balanced unless you are FaZe and you get almost 100-point club by Florida and this match with the LA Thieves. But overall, it's pretty balanced, and I think we're gonna get a lot of exciting series, and we got a handful of those this weekend. So I really like where this game is going competitively and also the league from a production standpoint for the season. Probably this is might be the most excited I've been for a season this early on.
True.
But
I
yeah.
feel more vested in this than prior. The only other year that I think is close might be Black Ops 4, when we were
Hmm.
all. I mean, we played in our own little private league and stuff like that, so that was really fun, and
Yeah.
watching and like rooting for all that stuff and knowing what's going on even more
And
so
going
than
to
now.
events
Yeah,
when we could.
exactly. Events. Oh my gosh, I wish. I can't wait. I can't. I'm going. Whatever event comes out next, I'm there. I'll have money on it. Double the price of the ticket. I'll still go. But yeah.
Mm.
Um. With that, I'm gonna say thank you for watching. Again, this is our
Yes.
third episode, and we try to make improvements every single episode. You, as you can see, we've been adding a lot of more kind of B-roll and
Hmm.
just more visuals in general, and trying to make it cleaner. And stay tuned for episode 4 or 5. We might have a surprise in the visual department. Um,
Hmm.
but for our next episode, or the next time you see us, I should say,
Hmm.
it will probably be um,
Ever
our
interview?
very first interview with a
Yep.
amateur player, and
Hmm.
I'm not gonna say who it is, but it should be exciting to see their and hear their
Yeah.
story.
Yeah, just to close, again, thanks everyone who's viewing, subscribing, liking, all of that fun stuff. I like when we say like we did not expect this, we truly mean it because we were talking amongst ourselves and just hoping for 40 views a video consistently and talking about what we might be able to do in the future. And so far, only 2 episodes in, granted, but so far it's been really really dope to see, and I mean that. This is not how I expected it would go at
Yeah.
the start. But yeah, talking about the interview, we're gonna have a special someone that I have a close connection with, and Amari hasn't really met too much yet. They'll be on for the interview, and also we'll talk about this a little bit more offline. But we talked about uploading like one-off type videos, maybe one or two a week, where maybe it's us playing Warzone or it's us talking about other things related to COD, or maybe even have like a bunch of our friends for like a little like a mini podcast that I mentioned earlier. So definitely stay tuned. And like he said, we're gonna keep improving, keep getting better every episode. So it should be more pleasing on the eyes, should be more better, uh, easier to listen to in your guys' ears compared to the first
Yeah.
episode. So yeah, very excited where we're going with this.
Alrighty. Thank you guys. Have a good night.
Yep.